What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Surf and Sales Podcast. I am one of your two co-hosts, Scott Leese, founder of Scott Leese Consulting, co-founder of the Surf and Sales Summit, here with my good friend and partner, Richard Harris. What's going on, bud?
Not much. I feel like I haven't seen you in like 2 weeks. I guess it has been a while. I've been traveling. I've been working for a while. I've been working for a living. What have you been doing? Putzing around?
What you have not been working. You have not been traveling and working. I
I
know
guess
you.
I was in Boston all last week
Yeah,
working.
you were at like a baseball game and like a hockey game and a basketball. You went from
No,
like,
I never did all that.
oh, okay,
So,
okay.
but
I'm
I
all
just,
right. I'm overtired
yeah,
today. I was at a concert late last night.
yeah.
That's just explaining. So I'm going to do my best to power through and make sure our guest here today, Chris Horton, account executive over at Bill, also known as Bill.com, formerly Divvy account
Yep.
executive. He's going to be joining us here in just a second. So we welcome him to the show. What episode number is this, Richard?
Season 5, episode 16. So
That's
we're
so 416. You're the
rough.
416th roughly guest. Welcome to the show, Chris. What's going on, man?
Hey, good to be here. Excited to chat a little bit more with you guys. I love the it's just a light conversation. I feel like I could just say anything here.
Yeah,
You
you're
can.
welcome to. Well, I'm going to let everybody in on a little secret that should make your company and your boss very excited. There's about one tool that I actually pay for in my tech stack, if
There
you
you
will.
go.
That one tool is actually Bill.com. I think I've used it for, I don't know, 5 years, 4.5, 5 years now.
Yeah, it's cool. I feel like I hear that pretty often actually, which is a good
No.
sign.
You don't understand. Scott doesn't have a CRM. He has an Excel sheet.
I don't have
Scott
anything.
You got a
Scott
notepad.
doesn't have a sales engagement platform. He doesn't have anything. Scott uses his Gmail email address because he doesn't want to pay for use the one that actually came with his website. So Scott doesn't. Scott has nothing. He probably doesn't pay. I don't know. Do you pay for Grammarly?
No.
No, he doesn't pay, but he's really good at grammar. That's why I asked the question. And then I know he pays for LinkedIn, not Navigator, but I know he pays for like
Oh,
whatever
that's
the
true. I do.
yeah
I do have the premium.
yeah.
Okay,
But
so
that's about it.
one of two things. Well, tell
Right.
tell everybody a little bit about your role. Account executive, shockingly, means multiple things to multiple people these days. Is it
Yeah.
inbound only? Is it outbound only? Is it a combination of both? Are
Yeah.
you actually prospecting? Or are you sitting around waiting for demos all day long? Like, tell
Man.
everybody about the account executive role that you're in.
Yeah, I wish I was sitting around waiting for demos all day. But so at one point, at one point we had an inbound team and an outbound team. And shortly after I started, they combined those two. So I originally joined what was like the outbound team, and then they just kind of joined it. So they spread all of the inbound leads that were going to one specific team. They spread those across like the whole AE org. And then, yeah, to answer your question about what an AE looks like for me, for at Bill, and I'm on their spend and expense side. So that's the formerly Divvy part of the company. But yeah, I mean, I prospect, I'm making dials, I'm sending emails, I'm connecting, I'm trying to,
So,
use everything that people talk about on this, on this podcast and others. So, and then I do demos, a few demos a
so,
week, close business.
so are you an SMB individual contributor, mid market? How does that just so people have context as we talk about
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. I'm on the mid-market team.
Okay.
So yeah, that's usually probably about, I don't know, 25 employees up to maybe 500, a little bit
Yeah.
more, maybe 1,000 employees.
So what's the
But yeah,
biggest difference? Let's pause right there, right? So that's a big spread,
yeah,
25 to 500, right? And for the individual contributors listening here, right? Like or where do you see the sales process shifting as you go from 25 employees? Is it at 100? Is it at
yeah.
50? And then again, is it at 250 or 400? Like, where do you see those in general, right? Because we're not necessarily talking, it doesn't have to be Bill.com.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, I've been a part of companies. Like I joined a tech company as I think I was maybe 35th hire, and really, and we grew that company to over 400 employees. This was my previous company work stream. And I guess just from that perspective, like the company really started to shift after we had probably, I would say, that 100 employee mark.
Wait a
We
minute. I
started,
want to, no, I get that. We can come to that.
yeah,
What I want to know is when you're selling into a company,
right,
selling into a company that's 25 is different than 100 or 250. Like, where do
right,
you start to see and what do you start to see shift as you
yeah,
start to grow your sales skills up market?
for sure. Yeah, and that's why I bring in kind of that like experience with the company that grew is like at first it's the smaller companies, I'd say like that 25 to 75 employee company, maybe even 100. The CEO is the one, or the founders or whoever it might be, they're the ones buying the software and determining the processes and things like that. Seems like once you get above 100 employees, that's when they start to hire kind of a little bit more. There's delineation between like a VP and a CEO, and they're bringing in people to kind of be more specialized into sales or finance or marketing or whatever that might be. And then when I feel like, and then once you get to, I don't know, 250 or 300 plus employees, that's when there's even more of that where, you're talking to someone that's extremely specialized just on maybe this part of their finances, their spend side of their finance, spend and expense, or, their accounts payable, accounts receivable side of their business versus before when you're talking to a business with 75 to 200 employees, you're probably just talking to a CFO or maybe even a founder. So like if I were to go sell to Scott, he's the CEO. He's the only one. He's a, one
Good
person
luck.
business.
Good luck.
And
Scott's not going to buy shares. So,
I mean, I think that
well,
is,
although he would, because if you were up, maybe you should upsell Scott for
yeah, there
Bill.com.
we
See if
go.
this is Scott. He just decided to do this as a potential upsell call. Like this is all just a pitch to you.
This is an RGA right here. It's a revenue
Right.
generating activity.
I'm
Right.
marking this as a demo set, a demo held. It's going in.
I mean, it's certainly an MQL if nothing else.
There
Right.
you go. You came inbound for sure.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of all these different channels and all this kind of stuff, what is working best for you and your team right now? What does the
yeah.
data tell you?
Yeah, I mean, the company as a whole has done a lot of analysis on like, is it best to just throw dollars at ads on like LinkedIn, Meta, whatever it is, and then working with those leads from there. We've actually found that if you step away and get just a little bit scrappier, then we see way better results, way better ROI on like the spend. So like we just try to do is, be as creative as we can, take folks to MLB games, NBA games. Like we try to go fill a box suite with potential prospects. And, I flew to Chicago. I'm going to Nashville. Like we just try to get creative, working with that marketing team in tandem with the sales team. Like the sales team are going to be the ones out kind of manning those events, but working with marketing to make sure like, I would much rather be there like at the Chicago, like at Wrigley Field with a prospect than like hopping on a blind demo with an inbound that just wants an iPad or something like that, or a gift card or whatever it might be. So, I feel like we have a lot more opportunity when we can get in front of folks as well. Like now that we're back into that world of in-person events and in-person things, like, yeah, our team's really creative with putting on our own events as well. We hosted the office that I'm at here in Utah, we hosted like a founders fest where we just had a bunch of tech founder, or really any founder, come into town, come into our office. We had giveaways, food, prizes, like just being a
A
little
lot of
bit
these
through.
small kind of meetups is
Yeah,
like a very, very big hot prospecting strategy right now.
yeah,
Executive dinners, this concert that I was at last night, this company had brought a bunch of prospects there that was in
yeah,
this suite lounge area. Yeah. So I'm seeing that kind of across the board.
yeah.
Right. What
Well,
I
you're not
didn't
going to
hear
turn down
you
a
say,
concert, right?
what I didn't hear you say was you're hammering out 500 emails a day and 200 calls a day
Yeah,
and all of the sort of old traditional prospecting methodologies. Do
yeah.
you find that those are still working as well as they did before for you? They work, but not as well. They don't work at all.
Yeah. When I was an SDR back in the day, I remember going to Outreach put on this event. It was like a road show that they did, and it was about personalization at scale. And I remember that was like a brand new topic because everyone was just this was 5, 6 years ago. Everyone was just blasting and dialing, and the way you set a demo on the phone was just like, hey, we do XYZ. Do you want to hop on a demo and talk about it a little bit more? Then there was this personalization at scale push. And I think, even 5 years ago, it was a brand new thing. It seemed even then, like people aren't really adopting it till now. Like right now, I'm seeing people that never, I didn't think would ever pick up on much personalization or believe in like going against spray and pray. They're like, it's not working. Like I send 150 emails a day and people open them, whatever it might be. But like the ability that I have to delete an email really quickly is insane. And then now, like we see that your emails, if they're not relevant, personalized, and if they have any sort of spam in them or sent in bulk in any way, they're just going to get blocked and sent right to spam, in their inbox. So anyways, I think high volume is good, but you just have to do it in the right way where there's got to be a signal or a trigger for everything you're doing. Whether it's like, hey, Scott, I want to take you to a concert. Like I know you like concerts. I know you like getting out and being social. Like that could be a signal, and that's a simple one, an easy one. It's hard for you to turn down like a good offer, but like, I don't know, shooting out like, hey, $25 gift card for taking a demo, or like $10 Starbucks if you have coffee with us. Like everybody is offering that nowadays, so you're no different from the person next door.
That's interesting. I want to just share something that happened yesterday because I think you'll both find it interesting, and the listeners will too. Um, I was talking to a client, and they were looking at, they're going through this whole process of, only a handful of SDRs, but each SDR manages like 5 or 6 different email names, right? So that they have different outboxes and stuff. And starting in April, their response plummeted, and they were having good open and response rates, and it plummeted. And they went and did what everybody else was doing: is they went and, you know, got some new domains and got some new emails, and were running them through the whole DMARC, the Jesse Ulay stuff, Scott, that he talks about, and setting it all up. And before they even turned them on, they got blocked. The
Jeez, that's
system
crazy.
already had blocked them, and it's kind of like, wow. So this, and I share that with people because people want to know, well, what's working, what's happening. Well, that's as of May 6th, 2024.
Yeah.
What's a story? So I wouldn't use it as the sole data point, but it's happening. So here's my question: how do you get through the noise, right? Because you still have to get that person to come to this event. Like, are you
Yeah.
saying free tickets to Wrigley in the subject line? Like, you still got to get them to open and respond to that. So
Yeah.
where's the differentiator, right? Like, what is it?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that like these sales engagement tools have taught us or tried, given us the idea that buying something or signing up for something or whatever it is a linear process of like, you go in and set up a sequence, and it's text, email, call, text, email, call, LinkedIn, call, text. You think like a lot of people, sales folks think that buying is a 16-step sequence process. And on that 15th or 16th step, they'll accept your invitation or they'll buy your product or whatever it is. I saw a graphic the other day. It was just like buying is this spider web of things.
Yeah.
And
That's an interesting way to characterize buying in the process, the
Yeah.
spider web of things.
Yeah.
I think people have called it a flywheel is the
Yeah.
buzzword, which I hate because I'm like, well, I don't even know what a flywheel is, but
Yeah.
I do like the spider web effect. Yes.
Yeah. I think flywheel is like, whatever the word is, but I just like for me, a flywheel is something that like continues to propel itself, which I guess like selling could be that, but I think of a flywheel more as like going and getting referrals or
I don't
like,
even know what it is. Like, I don't even know, like, in the real world what that word is, like, physically. I don't even want to know. I'd much rather
yeah,
just talk about spider webs. That's far more
yeah,
simple, right? And
yeah. I
everybody
mean,
understands it. So what does that mean for y'all? So when you look at this prospecting approach, right, and getting in touch, how is a spider web different than a sequence or a cadence? Or is
Yeah.
it just that all those touches can happen on the same day as opposed to this linear approach is day one, day three, day five? Like, what does that
Yeah.
spider web mean for you?
I mean, yeah, it can happen on the same day. It can happen spread out. Like, I don't know if there has to be a specific rhyme or reason. Like, if I'm prospecting Richard Harris, I understand that Richard maybe isn't as active on LinkedIn as Scott Leese. And so the way that I prospect Richard is not going to
Well, wait,
be
wait, 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 wait.
that
Anyway,
was a
go
little bit
ahead.
of truth right there, right?
No, but yeah, go ahead. Anyway,
Perception is reality.
yeah, yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
And I think being a familiar face in a not annoying way is just the key to people recognizing, people accepting your offers, right? So, if I come at you with 3 phone calls on the first day and then 2 LinkedIn messages the next day or whatever it is, like that's going to come off as pretty annoying. But yeah, meet people where they are, sell to them in the place that they want to be sold to and the way that they want to be sold to. Make sure your offer brings value. So anyways, like what that might look like is like if you're prospecting, looking at a specific account or a group of accounts or whatever it is, like say you're going after companies that were recently funded. You've got a list of chief sales officers, VPs of sales, whatever it is for recently funded companies. You add them on LinkedIn, you engage with their content, comment, like whatever it might be, like you build a relationship and familiarity, like, hey, this Chris guy is engaging with me without dropping that pitch slap in my inbox.
Mhm.
And then eventually, like as you build familiarity, then you can drop in and make your offer
So let me,
or pitch or whatever.
all right, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions. So one, let's say we take the spider web approach, 3 phone calls the first day, 2 LinkedIn messages, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into, well, do you leave a message on each phone call? It's like, I don't know, just fucking do it, right? You figure it out.
Yeah.
But what's the worst response you get, right? Because everybody's afraid you're going to get slapped on the wrist, you're going to get all these things, right? Do people like, you're really like, how often do you get you're really annoying me, I hate you, I hate your company, I've reported you, like how often do you get that?
I mean, I still get it all the time. Like I was going after a list of people that follow Bill on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they should recognize LinkedIn, they should recognize Bill. They should recognize like I work for Bill, blah, blah, blah. But
Mm-hmm.
like I get messages back all the time where people are like, what the hell is Bill? Like,
But
and I'm like,
do they say, stop annoying me? Like I reached out to your boss to tell him that, you suck and I don't like this approach. Like, do they bash you at that level? Or is it like, just leave me alone, unsubscribe?
yeah, I don't get too much of like the bashing. Um, it happens for sure, but like I just try to take not like a careful, but just like, a tasteful
Well,
approach to it.
yeah, well, and that's why I'm asking, because I think we all run this risk of this belief that, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
horrible. And then now I have 2 more questions because you made me think about something. If I'm first trying to reach out to someone, is it smarter to do the 3 phone calls in a day, 2 LinkedIn messages on day 2 before I ever email them? Because once I start emailing them, they can hit me into the spam. Like, is that part of your strategy, or is that no? I just randomly came up with that, Richard.
Good question, man. Um, I mean, I'm not necessarily, I think what a lot of folks, they think that the message that I send on LinkedIn and the message that I say on the phone and the message that I email is
Mhm.
all the same. It's do a demo of my software. Whereas I think you can drop value in like an email, make it something that like, I'm not necessarily going to unsubscribe from this because I'm not getting pitched, but it brings value and recognition to who you are. And then when you call and you actually do pitch, you say, hey, did you see my breakdown of questions that CFOs are asking in 2024? Yeah, I saw it in your email. Cool. I don't want to, annoy you or whatever it is. I know I'm calling you randomly, but I think that, and you go into your pitch that's a little bit
Yeah.
more, but now you're relevant and you're familiar to them and you're
Mhm.
not just a pitch bot that's like calling and pitching in every voicemail and email and everything like that.
Cool. One last question. You sell to a lot of CFOs, you sell to a lot of finance people.
Yeah.
How do you handle the ROI objection? Because I bet they'd love to use it all the time on you.
Yeah. I mean, 2024, like the whole initiative is like efficiency with your dollars. And so I'm not a huge fan of like the ROI calculator, like this many, you know, hours saved equals this many dollars equals this like amount that you guys are putting back into your pocket. Um, just because I don't know, like that I don't quite feel like it resonates as much as it needs to. But there's a reason that everybody's talking to you, and I think always just going back to that reason, like you said that you want to talk to me because your accounting team is spending 12 hours at the end of the month trying to reconcile all of your expense reports and all of your credit card charges and things like that. Does that still, has anything changed since you brought that up? And so trying to, fill that gap with your product. I think making it a little bit of like serendipity, like you've got this problem and my product just so happens to be the solution to it.
Clearly, you see Scott Leese's content on LinkedIn far more than you do mine, because that's a very Scott Leese reply. That sounds like something I could hear. I mean, I know Scott, like that's a smart approach. Like it's, you know, so I'm just making a dig back about LinkedIn. Okay, Scott, now that we're able to get some fluids into your hungover body, what questions do you have for Chris?
I'm curious to hear from Chris. what what do you wish your bosses and people like us, frankly, who've been around maybe a little bit longer than you,
Yeah.
what do you think? What do you wish people like us knew and understood about what you're going through every day right now as an accounting executive that you don't feel like your bosses or we might understand as much?
Jeez, that's a crazy question. And my hope is just that my bosses don't end up watching this full episode. They get 10 minutes in and they're like, this is boring. So no. Um man, I think Richard, you had that conversation a little while ago with Will Falkenberg and Brandon Jepson. I'm really good friends with those two. We're us three and many, many others like us are in a similar situation. Like I just had a baby a year ago. Um,
Congrats.
Thank you. It's awesome. Like I love being a dad. I love everything about it. But like, I don't know, for example, like I got sick a week ago and I'm just getting over it. Like my voice is still hoarse, but um I think it's like it's a little bit of that understanding that like we're not robots and we don't just wake up instantly wanting to go crush quota. Like it takes a bit for us to, it takes remembering our why and all of that jazz to like go back at open up the laptop and start, wanting to get after it. So like there's just so much stuff that goes into our daily lives and like we're early on in our careers. Like I wish I could say I was 15 years into it and I know everything and I am perfect with my follow-ups and I'm perfect with like my Salesforce hygiene and things like that. But at the end of the day, like I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I have hobbies, I get sick, all of that sort of thing. So like, sure, yeah, 85, 90% of the time, I'm going to be pretty excited to go out and just crush quota all the time. But then there's going to be that like 5 to 10 to 15% of the time where like I got 3 hours of sleep and today I'm going to work maybe a little bit more on admin work than I am on like pipeline
Yeah.
generation.
And what do you want, real specifically, what do you want from a boss or a leader for them to demonstrate that they recognize that? Like, what does that support look like or
Yeah.
sound like?
I mean, I think good leaders, like they relate themselves to me today, So I don't necessarily want to hear like, well, when I was 28 and I had my first kid or blah, 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 like that's fine. But like, from your perspective, what is it that, if you're my VP of sales, my director, my manager, whatever it is, like when you're in my position, what did you do to, still be productive on a sick day or, get over a really crappy night's sleep or whatever it might be? Like, whatever, like little things there is that like helped you guys get to where you are today. Because I'm sure you've been in a very similar position to what me and Will and Brandon are going through right now, where like life is a little crazy. 2023 kind of rocked everybody as far as the economy and whatnot. And like, I think put a lot of question marks in sales folks' head of like, am I actually headed down the right career path? And so what did you guys do, in 2008 when everything crashed to like come up out of it and be where you're at today?
Yeah. I think just maybe taking the time to engage in that conversation is sometimes enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Enough support just to engage in that conversation and
Yeah.
try to relate, understand what you're going through a little bit. If you ask me questions like that, then offer up some advice, but not necessarily just start off by saying, well, when I was a kid, this is what I did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you mentioned 2023 like throwing people for a loop?
Yeah.
But then rewind it farther back into like the pandemic and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you prefer working in an office or working remotely?
Good question. I prefer, this is the dumbest answer, but like I love hybrid. Like I go into the office 2 times a week and that gives me my fill of like social
Yeah.
interaction and in-person meetings and things like that. But like then I have my 3 days a week where I'm at home and just like pretty dialed in.
So my follow-up question to that then is, do you feel at all like you've lost something by not being in the office 5 days a week? Do you feel at all that your growth curve and learning has been slowed or stagnated or, just hasn't progressed as much?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the majority think. I'm probably not the majority, but I do think that being in person helps me to show that my leadership capabilities, my grit or whatever it might be. And it's not like, hey, I'm gonna go show you that I'm gonna sit at my desk and like rip dials all day long. Like it's not a visuals thing, an optics thing. But I think it's the ability to like turn to a manager and be like, boom, question here. Or if I'm a BDR, I was talking to a BDR yesterday that said, like, I wish I was in an office so that I could just turn to you and say, what could I have said different on that cold call? So I think that, a few things like everything is delayed, everything is asynchronous,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have quite the ability to like voice up in some meetings and some, things that happen
Yeah.
internally.
I
Whereas in
appreciate I
person,
appreciate the honest answer. The people that chime in on these things don't seem to be the people actually living it every
yeah,
single day. So I was super curious, what it's like for you and what your
yeah,
preferences are, and then how those preferences might impact things moving forward, like how companies hire, how companies train and onboard and coach,
yeah,
all this kind of stuff, right? Because
Uh,
yeah,
I think that most old talking heads would be like, you're missing out by not being in the office every single day. I mean, I see people writing about this all the time. I think there's some truth to it. I don't think that I'm on the extreme end of
yeah,
that whatsoever, though.
yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate you answering it honestly and thoughtfully. Go ahead, Richard.
yeah, so and I probably lean more towards the old talking head that Scott's referring to. But that's based on my own bias. Like that's based on I like that interaction. I need that interaction
Right.
for people, and I like the ability to grow and learn and those things. But I was also very much afforded a lifestyle, like as a single person with no kids,
Hmm.
easy to do. As a married person with no kids, easy to do. As a
Yeah.
married person with our first child and us being financially stable, still pretty easy to do, right? It's very different though. Today, look, it's a whole lot harder today.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're a single parent or a couple parent, like whatever your status is,
Yeah.
it's still just hard, right? And so I love the value that the hybrid piece brings for that. And believe me, there are days where I was like, God, why do we got to come in on a Friday? Like, and look, I've known Scott long enough, and Scott, this, like it was understood when I worked for Scott that we showed up on Saturdays. even though we were, cold calling, et cetera.
That
If you
was
were
a
behind on
golden
the
era, Richard. That was a golden
yes.
era, long, long time ago.
Yeah, I'm not saying Scott would do that now, because I think that was when Scott was a new manager and he was learning, and it was a different presence and a different population.
Also, our
And
buyers were very available on Saturday.
yes, they were. They were. And it was 2008, so everybody was pushing hard to maintain their job. So it was a very different situation. But I've lived both extremes at my point. I've also been working from a home office for the last 12 years, long before everybody else did. So it's a complicated answer, right?
Yeah.
And it can be career, or it could be role dependent. It could also be career dependent, right? Or lifestyle dependent. And it's very complicated. So I appreciate you saying it too. So,
yeah.
well, what do you want to ask us? We got to get to wrapping up, but this has been fun. This is we had no idea where this was going. I loved it, and really appreciate you getting so deep. By the way, I will say one more thing before you answer that question. It was interesting what you said about when you answered Scott's question about what would you want from your leaders? What do you want them to know? I do the state of mental health report, and it just came out for May, and it's free to anybody who wants to get it. State of mental health and sales. And one of the top things that we ask people at your peak, what were your leaders doing to support you? And it was what you said, which was being vulnerable. Right. It was literally like, I want to say that's number 3 out of the top 5. And there's like 13 things. And vulnerability doesn't mean coming in, as you said, and telling about the back in the day when it was just being available.
Yeah.
So that someone knew how to could come in and say, man, I am struggling with this. What advice, you kind of have to wait for them to ask the advice, but then you got to give them that advice. So I just want to tell you, good, bad, or otherwise, you're aligning with everybody else who is figuring this life shit out. So.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know either which direction this would go. I could talk about like cold calling tactics for 2 hours if we wanted to, but I think the direction we've kind of gone is, which is a little bit more of the like mindset, career path, opportunities, how to like take advantage of, living life while being a seller and progressing a career. And I think maybe that's like the question that I do have, because you guys are much more experienced than I am. You've been around the block. You've been through, different economic situations. Like for someone that's, let's just say that we're like late 20s, early on in the SDR or the AE, the sales world, whatever it might be, like, what are the things that we should look out for, that we should be like jumping on? Should we be looking at specific types of companies or roles or, things like that like, what are the, I guess, like principles that we should be following to make sure that we're building decent career paths?
Great question.
I can go.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One is acknowledge where you are today in the cycle of sales, right? It's May of 2024. I would, regardless of what your company wants you to do, I would learn everything you can about AI and sales right now, because it's going to shift every 90 days, right? That's the first thing I would tell you to look at. The second thing I would tell you to think about is, how fast can I skill myself appropriately to get up market to higher mid-market and enterprise places? I think until the buying committee is comfortable buying from an AI tool, there's always going to need to be a human involved. And I think the further up you go, the more that happens, right? That's going to happen. If you go sell to a 500 person or 1,000 person or a 5,000 person company, you now have to go through IP reviews and security reviews and InfoSec and you know, uh, compliance for SOC 2 or other, because you're a finance company, right? You're an accounting company, so there's all that data. So that would be one thing, because I feel like there's a little bit of, for lack of a better phrase, there's some safety higher up in the cloud in terms of your career. The last thing I will say is, or the 2 last things I'll say is that, I'll steal Scott's words, which is, you're not looking for job security, you're looking for career security. I think that's the right way to phrase, Scott.
It's not quite, but that's close enough.
And on top of that, I would tell you, remember, you're always a free agent in sales.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean go job hop and hop and hop and hop unless you absolutely have to. But there's, you know, at some point you'll have to decide. I probably know where Scott's going with this, but you'll decide when to make the move. And you know, as long as you've been successful and demonstrate knowledge and expertise, you won't have a hard time finding a next gig, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I want to hear what Scott has to say too.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of awareness, self-awareness, and sort of market awareness. You know, you asked about certain types of companies. You know, now is probably not the best time to be in like the mortgage industry, for example, because interest rates are like super high and stuff is not flying off the shelves. This is top of mind for me because I know a guy who used to work for me who is a VP of sales in the mortgage kind of business. And he just reached out to me and was like, I got to get out of this business. I'm getting crushed.
Yeah.
It's like, why did you take that job? He just started it, you know, not that long ago. It's like, there's not good market awareness there. And therefore, there's not good self awareness because he's not putting himself in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
So, another example is let's say that you are you're really like a relationship seller. You like to take your time, you like long sales cycles and things like that. Well, if that's the case, you should not put yourself in a role that requires fast sales cycles, more sort of assertive kind of tactics, closing deals, you know, at a quick rate, whatever, and vice versa. If I like the high velocity kind of stuff, I shouldn't put myself in a position where I have a 2-year sales cycle because that's not my strength.
Yeah.
Right. So I really think it's important for people to develop, you know, self-awareness. So you know your strengths and weaknesses, and you know how to put yourself in a position to succeed rather than fail. And that also requires some market awareness in terms of, you know, sectors that are performing well and performing poorly, things of that nature. So that was what I was thinking when you asked the question.
Yeah. Yeah. This is your podcast too, so I'm not the one asking the questions. Like, but I mean, I love that. Like, Richard, what you said about learning AI, like you guys have talked about this a bunch on with different guests, but I don't even like, I know very few reps, whether they're like a individual contributor or account manager, like whatever they might be, that like don't know where to even start as far as AI and like using AI tools. And a lot of this sounds foreign because a lot of folks have just been like going through the motions of whatever that like playbook document that they've been sent says to do. And I think what I maybe hope is that the future of sales is just people that are willing to go and get their hands dirty with like new tools and new processes and things that like haven't really been done before that can just make them more efficient and more effective, you know, at the end of the day. So that would make a lot of room for, you know, kind of push out the folks that really we could automate their job and that aren't interested in getting better. So
Yeah, that's a great that's a great way to kind of wrap up the show today. I think with Chris's comments there. Go ahead and ruin it, Richard.
I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn at my age. So
You're doing
this is
great.
why I was so excited to come on this show specific. Like it's just the band. It's like, no, there's no script. There's no slides. It's all just, it's happening.
yeah, believe me.
This is how we communicate in private as well.
Yes, there's
Yeah, I can
nothing new
imagine.
here. Our tech is probably worse. So,
Yeah.
but no, I think this is great, Chris. I think it's a great question. I love sort of how you brought it all back to the human side of stuff at the end, which was really, really cool. And so I appreciate you coming on
Yeah.
here and making the
Yeah.
time for us. So thank you so much.
It's been awesome. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Tell people where they can find you, get a hold of you. LinkedIn,
Yeah.
maybe?
I know I'm annoying on LinkedIn. I'm posting, you know, probably too much, but I try to share like what a day in the life of an AE that's prospecting and closing deals. But yeah, LinkedIn, Chris Horton. I don't know if you type that in, maybe it'll come up, maybe it won't.
Account executive at Bill, aka
Yeah.
Bill.com.
Not
Former
Bill
Jimmy.
Horton, but I get that all like, hey, who is this? Is this Bill? No, I'm calling from Bill. But yeah, no, Chris Horton at Bill. You'll find me out there. I'm pretty active.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Surf and Sales podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Richard.
Chris.